Every month, there's new movies that come out that I just miss on initial release, but that I eventually see them when they're available to rent. Likewise, at the beginning of this month, I didn't do an April movies ranked because there were a couple of movies I knew I wanted to see and I just hadn't seen yet. So today we're going to do a makeup ranking where I'm going to rank all of the 2021 movies that I missed thus far, plus the April movies that I saw from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Let me know what 2021 movies that I haven't seen yet or reviewed or ranked in one of my monthly rankings do I need to check out. Also, what opinion in this video do I need to rethink? Which movie is way too low and which one is way too high? I'd love to hear your opinions on it, and let's get started. Coming in last place is Thunder Force. Now, one of the primary reasons I didn't do an April movies ranked at the beginning of May is because I hadn't experienced Thunder Force yet, and I feel I needed to go through that event before doing this ranking for you, and it didn't disappoint, or in the other sense, it only disappointed. The central concept, the premise of this film about middle-aged women becoming superheroes in a city filled with supervillains and they're the only hope to stop them, that's not a bad idea for a comedy. Doesn't change the fact that this is a very bad movie. And if you've been following Melissa McCarthy's career for the last 5 years, you know exactly why. You know exactly what every joke in this movie is going to be, how every scene is going to play out. It's just another one of her comedies doing the exact same shtick with her husband as the writer and director. And so he just lets her go in there and she starts like dancing to pop songs from the 90s. She's riffing with her friends. And there's no real punchlines. It's just people acting quirky with a very small amount of wit from beginning to end. I mean, it doesn't do anything at all clever with the premise. It just picks every trope you can imagine about long-lost friends getting back together and superhero movies, clumps them together with every lazy Melissa McCarthy joke, and it does that for 2 hours. It even goes longer than it should. Just kind of keeps on going, and there's like a dating subplot with Jason Bateman with crab arms, and she's like, "Let me butter you up," and starts rubbing butter on his arms. I mean, it's I guess I would say it's like shockingly bad, but it's not. Because this is what Melissa McCarthy has been doing for about 5 years. She can be really funny. She has been really funny. But whenever she teams up with her husband with these projects where he writes and directs and she stars, it's just her doing lazy comedy with her friends. And that's what this is. Coming in at number 11 is The Marksman. This one breaks my heart. I enjoy Liam Neeson thrillers. I have a lot of fun with him doing his shtick. So almost all of these movies he's been doing since Taken, I can have fun with. But for me, this one is kind of bottom of the barrel Liam Neeson action thriller. And I think some of that is that he's like oddly miscast in the film. The director of the film was basically Clint Eastwood's producer for like 25 years. He worked with Clint Eastwood on most of his movies, including Gran Torino. And when you watch this movie, it feels like a film that originally was supposed to star cranky Clint Eastwood. And then cranky Clint Eastwood was like, I don't think I'm up for it because I'm 90 years old now. And so then they just went and converted it into a Liam Neeson vehicle. That's what this movie feels like. And so Liam Neeson is crankier than normal. He's less relatable than normal. And it just goes on a journey that is short on thrills and action for an action thriller, goes on much too long, and touches on all the beats that you kind of expect from a road trip movie like this. But like at its core, it's just trading so much credibility because there's these cartel guys that are just always able to find them, even though they're driving cross country, across hundreds and hundreds of miles, where there's countless different roads and ways that you can get to all these different places. And somehow, traveling from Mexico to Chicago, they keep being able to find them. So for me, is one of my least favorite Liam Neeson thrillers that he's done. I mean, it's literally at the very bottom of my list, I'm pretty sure, of them, unfortunately. Bringing us into the top 10 is Justice Society World War II. Pretty big jump here. I'm pretty sure I'd go like a B- on this one. So I enjoyed it well enough for what it is, whereas the Marksman was like a C for me. But so Justice Society World War II, I would, it's a fun premise, this idea of seeing these DC characters, the Justice Society in World War II. There's a lot of fun to be had in that. It's got some time travel elements with Barry Allen going from present back to then. Has several twists and turns throughout it, kind of bringing in some additional Justice League members in some creative, interesting ways that you're not expecting it to play out. And so there's all these interesting things about it. The central plot line, the specific adventure that they're on, I didn't find to be that captivating. The twist, the reveals, the gimmick, all that worked. The specific plot line, the through line tying it together, I wasn't as invested in as I hoped I would be. And that's kind of where some of these get hit and miss for me. Some of them I really think they're onto something. Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, I really dug that one and got invested in it. It wasn't like, it had gory gimmicks and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, seeing these characters torn apart, pretty cool. But then also had a story that I got kind of swept up in a deep mythology. This one, the story itself, I didn't care about what they were trying to accomplish, and that hurt the film for me. Next up, Wrong Turn, the remake. So I had never seen a Wrong Turn movie until about a month ago. And in my fan mail, one of my fans sent me the whole series, every single Wrong Turn movie. So I watched through all of them during the afternoons while editing videos and stuff like that. And then finally got to the new one and watched it late at night one night. And while most of the sequels in the middle for the Wrong Turn franchise they're pretty rough. They are pretty rough direct-to-video schlock fests. The remake, actually, clever reinvention. It starts off feeling a little bit too much like all the other movies in the franchise, with a group of college kids going into the mountains with a bunch of hicks that they look down on, just like all the other movies in the franchise. And it's better production, better put together than the direct-to-video ones, but felt a little bit familiar. And then once you get into the woods, it like takes a sharp left turn and it does something totally different with the franchise. And the mythology, instead of just rehashing what all the sequels up to this point in time just rehashed the original one. This one takes the central premise of college students going into the woods, and then it just does something. It's still horror, but it does something totally different with it. It kind of has this rich mythology, a backstory that's kind of intriguing. You're like, oh, that ties to this. Okay, that's kind of cool. You kind of care a little bit more about the villains of the story, and there's other characters that tie into it, and it spans time. And so of the Wrong Turn movies, easily in the top two, the remake. Still not great cinema. I'm not raving about this being like an amazing reinvention of the horror genre or anything like that, but actually a decent little horror film and a nice way to reinvent the Wrong Turn franchise. At least that's as perspective of someone that has only been watching Wrong Turn movies for a month now. Moving right along, that will bring us to number 8, Nomadland, which this movie just won Best Picture. And if you don't wear the Oscars basically allowed entry of, I think, January and February. So it's kind of wacky. Some movies that came out this year were nominated for Best Picture, and a bunch of them are in this list henceforth. Of the Best Picture nominees for this year, Nomadland, the winner, was one of my least favorites. I could appreciate the artistic nature of the direction. I can appreciate what they were going for and telling a scripted narrative in the style of a documentary and making it feel just so real and grounded, amazing cinematography. But it's a movie to me that raised questions and it raised questions that required me to have some answers to even explore the question they were raising. That I had all of these questions about what led this character to be in this situation, why she's not doing more to get help from other people. And it didn't answer enough of those ones for me to be even able to explore the interesting themes the movie was trying to explore. It has all sorts of stuff about homelessness, job situation, retirement, all kind of these big themes that are interesting and pose questions about what would you do and what should society do? What does this mean about us? But at the same time, it's a movie where all throughout the film, you have a character that's refusing help and making choices that set her up to be in this situation. So when you start being like, what does this say about homelessness? Well, if you've paid attention to this situation, it's like, well, but these are people that are choosing to be in it. Like, you're not really building an argument against it's tough to say that you're building an argument in the direction it seems like you're arguing, because you're also saying that this person has chosen this path. It was a very frustrating watch for me that I didn't leave it feel like I was having an interesting conversation about the themes it seemed to be raising. So for me, I honestly don't understand what other people are seeing in this film. I don't see what they're seeing. There's certain talent to it, and then there's a lot of frustration for me. Then we have Stowaway. This is a Netflix original starring Anna Kendrick. And this is another one why I delayed doing the April ranking. I'd been intending to watch Stowaway since initially, whenever it first dropped. My wife's a big Anna Kendrick fan. I like space movies. So we both wanted to check this one out, but just the timing of it, when certain things were dropping, deadlines and stuff, it just wasn't a priority. So it didn't end up happening when I wanted it to. Finally, last week, we were able to get it watched. And it was pretty good, while not being as good as it should have been. It's a movie that when it's in its stride, it has creates some very interesting tension between the characters and has a real moral dilemma at its core that's fascinating, that feels like earned conflict. It's an over-the-top ridiculous scenario, but also feels like, what would happen if they were in this situation? What would you do? What choice would you make? And so when it's in that mode, I thought it worked really nicely. It just takes a long time to get there. Like, it feels like a movie that spends so much time doing setup, establishing the characters, establishing the trip, their mission, and you're kind of going, okay, what are we doing? What's taking so long? That when we get to the part where the tension and the moral dilemma comes in, they lost me a little bit. They win me back, but I just wish that first 45 minutes, maybe trim that to 30 minutes. I think there was just too slow. And I think you could have tightened that up, and the whole movie would have flowed better, had better pacing, and gotten to the tension just a little bit quicker without needing to elaborate on every detail about these characters. Another thing the movie does really well is that it very much creates the claustrophobia that you'd feel on the spaceship, where from the opening shot, we're with the astronauts as they're taking off, and it never cuts back to Earth. It never, even when they have conversations, radio conversations with people back on Earth, we don't get to hear them. We're just right there in the silence of space with them having these conversations. And so it puts you, like, you feel the claustrophobia, you feel the tension of, like, what if you were in that box for 2 years and there's just this one wall between you and space? It makes you feel that better than any movie I can think of in recent history. So many movies, you're just in a spaceship and you don't even think about it. And this one, the whole time you are aware you're in a spaceship. Like, and you're right here. So it does so many things really nicely. Of course, enjoyed the cast on it, but I think the pacing really threw this one off. And I don't think where it ends is the most satisfying. It feels like they could have found something more satisfying for a conclusion. In sixth place is Mortal Kombat. Now, I posted a review for this one, so you can hear my full thoughts on it in my review or in my ranking. And as a point of reference, there's like a section right here. They're all like B minuses. There's like 4 movies that are all kind of like, they're good enough. If you like the genre, you should check it out. And I'd say that about Wrong Turn, Nomadland, Stowaway, Mortal Kombat. They're all kind of in this B minus territory. They're all essentially tied. They're very weird movies to compare Nomadland to Mortal Kombat. Weird comparison. So as for Mortal Kombat, I had fun with the brutal rated R carnage. the rich Mortal Kombat mythology. It's just also a movie that I thought was an unnecessary prequel. It's the first movie, but it feels like the prequel to the movie that I want to see, which is the tournament. The whole movie is about the Mortal Kombat tournament. Mortal Kombat is the Mortal Kombat tournament. It's a video game. It's a tournament fighter. And this whole movie is all about training for the tournament, who's chosen for the tournament, how do you get a mark to be in the tournament. And then the movie feels like it's trying to delay doing the tournament. That to me kind of was pretty off-putting. Likewise, very weird choice to, instead of having any of the 100 characters that are in the video game or beloved characters that are in all of the video games as the star of the movie, it makes this new guy, Cole, the star. Who's Cole, you might ask? Well, he's a mildly interesting, pretty bad MMA fighter. That's why it's the star of the movie. And Johnny Cage is in the movie. Like Johnny Cage, like a character defined by being charismatic, fun, and a fan favorite. He's not in the movie. And instead we have Cole, who's pretty boring. And so Kano ends up having to do all the heavy lifting for charisma and fun. It's just a very weird choice. Bringing us into the top 5 is No Remorse. This is the new movie based off the Tom Clancy book. And this is another one that it's a little bit, like, I'm a big fan of this genre. I've been watching the Tom Clancy films since I was in middle school. And so I've kind of grown up with them. So I'm by default biased towards this one. But even though it feels like very high up on the list, there, like I said, there's this big chunk that they're all kind of close to one another. This one just kind of edges them out just because it's a little bit more my thing and fewer things that bugged me about it. So kind of a classic throwback revenge thriller, little politics thrown into the mix. I like the way the action was shot on it. It's kind of handled in a way that I thought put you in the room a little bit more. Even the sound of the gun sounded a little bit different. The characters use specific tactics and how they would navigate a room when there's a sniper across the hallway. I dug all that stuff about it. It's definitely familiar, definitely generic. Some people are going to check it out and be like, most generic movie of the year. I gotcha. I know where you're coming from. I appreciated a lot of things about the film, but you're not wrong if you thought the movie was generic or very familiar. Bringing us into the top 4 is Minari, and once again, we got a pretty big jump from No Remorse to Minari. And this is another one. I actually posted a full review of it. You can check that out right up here. Please actually do go check that one out. And this is a movie that was, I thought, a nicely handled character study about kind of integration in the 1980s. And what I really appreciated about it is that it showed all the struggles that this Asian family felt trying to start this farm in the deep South. But it didn't try and villainize all the Southerners. It's pretty common, like in these types of movies where everyone is like a Klans member or sympathetic towards the guy down the street, and that stuff just feels like so overcranked. And of course things like that happened. Of course they continue to happen, but it's presented in a manner that overstates the point. What I appreciated is that it showed Southerners as largely being ignorant, which they would be. And a lot of the things they say to, like at the lead family goes to a church, and some of the dialogue that people talk to them about where they're from and all sorts of stuff. I've heard people say that. So almost these exact sentences in a church setting, that level of ignorance, but I also know the person that said it wasn't saying it out of hatred or malice. It's just ignorant. And I appreciated that the story showed that, like, even ignorance alienates people and makes people feel like other, and that's a bad thing, but it doesn't mean that everyone is overtly trying to be a villain. They show the local people's trying to be very helpful and friendly in many ways. I appreciate that about it. It's also a movie that manages to, like, keep ratcheting up the tension while not doing anything super sensational. What it doesn't do is like put in a bunch of Hollywood type over the top scenarios happening. It's just very real type things that you would face as a farmer or in the South or trying to sell things or getting a job, marriage troubles, health issues, all the normal things that happen in life. And sometimes they stack on top of each other. And that's what happens in this movie. And I thought that was handled really nicely. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. Share what 2021 movies that I haven't covered through a review or a ranking do I need to check out that I've missed? Also, which one of these movies do I need to rethink? Which one was I too hard on? Which one was I not kind enough to? Especially thinking like Nomadland, what am I missing? I'm sure some of you loved it. What am I missing? Or do you agree with me on it? Let me know your thoughts down below. In third place, Judas and the Black Messiah, another movie that was nominated for Best Picture. And I just thought a really well done glimpse at an interesting set of people from the late 1960s, early 1970s, that time frame, where you have this leader of the Black Panthers that's this young man that's rising up in prominence and influence, followed by this guy that, because of youthful indiscretions, finds himself with the police having strong leverage over him, infiltrating the Black Panthers and feeding them the government information. And it's just such interesting characters to see right next to each other. And because it's based on a true story and we don't know exactly what did and didn't happen, and we don't have full answers on what was driving this person, what did he didn't feel about it, because he's made conflicting statements over the years. And I just thought that was just an interesting journey to go on. And it managed to have a lot of heart, emotion, tackle relevant themes while having an entertainment value to it at the same time, all with great performances. So a real solid film you should check out. Runner-up on here is The Father. And this is a movie I didn't know anything about until I was trying to watch through all of the Best Picture nominees. This was the last one that I watched, and that's a pretty intense set of movies to watch through. A lot of them are really slow. This was the last one, so I was like, man, another one of these. And then it turned out to be, of the nominees for Best Picture, this was my favorite of the bunch. And what it did so well is it's an exploration of a character played by Anthony Hopkins who has dementia, and he's doesn't see the world properly. And this is the movie that, since Memento, I think has done the best job of telling its story in a manner that mirrors the mental condition of the lead character, where the story is told in such an unreliable fashion to where scenes will loop back into themselves. Characters mid-scene will be played by someone different, and you just experience the horror that would be living with dementia. The movie's directed in a style like a horror film, but it's really just a story about a man with dementia and his daughter trying to decide the best way to take care of him. I mean, it's just a captivating story as you just watch it. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's the right length. It uses all the interesting techniques it can do to put you in his perspective. I thought it was very captivating film and very nicely written and directed film. But coming in at number 1 on here, one of my absolute favorite films of the year thus far, Mitchells vs. the Machines. I hadn't seen a trailer for this one. I didn't know anything about it going into it, and I just fell in love with it. I have a review over on my main channel. I'd encourage you to go check it out, so I'll talk pretty quick here. But it's just a movie that the animation is fresh and original, brings this youthful energy, and the way it visualizes things, and you kind of have the perspective of the daughter and her emotions are kind of brought into the animation and the way things are done. The humor, it's so energetic and witty in ways that you wouldn't expect, and turns things that sound like bad jokes into recurring hilarious jokes. And the part that just blew my mind is how heartfelt and wholesome it is by the time you get to the end, as it's telling the story about this family and them coming back together through this road trip and, you know, defeating an army of robots. And it was getting chills, getting all teary-eyed at the end. And so it made me laugh, it made me cry, and it told an interesting story with clever animation. So I can't imagine a better animated film coming out this year. Be sure to let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. What opinions do I need to rethink? Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.